Gui is a notable, wealthy, and handsome young man who is also a serial hard worker. He leads a very notable business named Anixia, and he had also encountered an accident a few years ago that has affected his brain and the part which connects his moods, and he gets bipolar and other mood changes. Not only is he one of the greatest CEO at that time, he has a secretary to be envied, Kaiho Jing. It all starts in 2017 when Kaiho wakes Gu for their meeting with Mr. Zhao, an investor with an ancient house in need of innovations. When they arrive at the meeting point, he asks Kaiho if their competing company, Jaya, isn't informed about the meeting and there will be no intruder. This is because Jaya has secured a deal with Zhao before Gu, and Gu seeks to take away the deal from them. She reassures Gu that the meeting was secret and there is no one else involved. However, upon arriving, she receives a text that one of the staff of Jaya is at the club, and he is informed about the meeting. She quickly informs Gu, who asks her to hold the intruder for about 10 minutes as that is all he needs for the meeting. She leaves and finds the representative of Jin, Mr. Chen. She tries to delay Mr. Chen by asking to drink with him, but Chen knows about her plan, so he refuses. At first, Gu finds it difficult to convince Zhao to secure the deal with them, but he eventually succeeds. When the meeting ends, he walks away and meets Chen with Kaiho. He sarcastically appreciates Chen for giving him the deal and leaves with Kaiho. The following day during the company's meeting, he asks that he found out one of them leaked the meeting to Chen, and he discovered it was his uncle, Zhang, who leaked it while drunk, and he fires his uncle. Following this, all the staff talk about the closeness between Gu and Kaiho, and they all rumor that they have been dating for some years, and the couples aren't just interested in making it known to the world. Zhao also visits the company to sign the deal and meets Gu's friend, Ju. Zhao complimented how lucky Gu is to have Kaiho as his secretary, as she is so beautiful and hardworking. In response, Gu says she is only hardworking in the office and useless in other places. He recalls when he wanted to get intimate with her while drunk, and she stops him and said he should take his drugs first. After the meeting, Ju tells his brother that it is best he makes his relationship status with Kaiho open. He reveals that the duo has been dating for 3 years, but it has been secret. Gu refuses to reveal his status, and Ju warns that Kaiho may leave. The following day, Chen calls Kaiho for a drink and tries to pitch his company to her. Gu visits the same club with Ju and gets jealous seeing Kaiho and Chen. He interrupts them and intentionally gets Chen drunk as a punishment. He returns home with Kaiho that night, and she tries to explain, but he refuses to hear and locks her out. She sleeps by the couch, and the following day, he asks her to get dressed and follow him out. They visit his uncle, Yang, and it was on High Mountain. Kaiho gets tired and sour in the journey, and when Yang realizes, he has them to return from the mountain, which gets Gu angry. Upon getting home, he doesn't try to pacify her or talk to her, but she sleeps beside him regardless. At work, the staff reveal that a well-known pianist, Bai Yun, who is also Gu's childhood friend, is returning to the country. Bai meets with Gu that night, drinks with him, and reveals she is ready to settle down. He asks her about her choice, and she says she hasn't found a man better than him. He doesn't reply to this but drinks with her. When she gets drunk, he calls Kaiho to bring hangover drink. She sees them in that situation and gets pissed, but he doesn't care, so he leaves with Bai. The following day, Kaiho goes to get his clothes, but the brooch she wants is also wanted by another man. She offers to help the man with choosing his dress so she can get the brooch, and after dressing him, the man is so appreciative. She leaves with the dress and coincidentally finds Bai. Bai mocks her for having to get Gu's clothes and even offers to take the clothes instead. She insists she is Gu's fiancé, and Kaiho also reveals her relationship with Gu, then calls Bai shameless. Angrily, Bai slaps her and she retaliates. She warns Bai that she is only patient with Gu and not any other person. Upon getting home, Gu informs her that he has dinner that evening and he wants her as his date. He notices the scar on her cheek and asks about it, but she claims it was just a scratch. So he asks her to deal with it before his dinner. Upon arriving at the dinner, Bai comes to take him away, and this causes several murmurs among people, as though that wasn't enough. Bai comes to tease Kaiho again, and she reminds her of her earlier warning. To humiliate her, she scratches her hand and pours her wine on her shoe and screams. Gu comes there, and Bai likes that Kaiho did it intentionally and asks Kaiho to bed and clean her shoe. Gu commands Kaiho to do as Bai wants, and despite being humiliated, she attempts to do it. The strange man she had met earlier that day turned out to be Bai Yan, a cousin of Bai, and he interferes. He insists Bai should dry clean her shoe or get a new one, as he won't allow his friend be humiliated. He leaves with Kaiho and helps Kaiho in treating her hand that was scratched. He also tells her he saw what happened earlier and Kaiho wasn't at fault. After the dinner, Bai confronts Gu to know if he is really dating Kaiho, but he doesn't answer. When Gu gets to Kaiho, she also asks him if he is really engaged to Bai, but he asks her not to buy rumors and leaves. The following day, the staff talks about what had happened at the dinner, and they are shocked to see Bai enter their office. Gu introduces her as a new assistant, and Bai also gives all the staff a gift as a welcome gift. In the course of the day's work, Mrs. Gu, Gu's mother, visits and tells Gu to revisit his engagement with Bai, reminding him of the things it will do to their family. He begs not to do it, but his mother insists his marriage is family business. During lunch, Bai intentionally takes the contract Kyo was working on and puts it in the dustbin in the toilet. When Kyo returns and starts searching for it, she finds a piece of Bai's clothes by her locker and asks to search Bai. Bai refuses, but when Gu interferes, she allows. Unfortunately, they didn't find the file on her. When Kyo checks the CCTV, she finds out if it was Bai and she searches the bins to get the file back. She takes it to Gu when he was leaving with Bai, and Bai calls her dirty because she was smelling of trash. Gu refuses to take the file from her since she was late and calls her inefficient. He leaves for a dinner with Bai, and Bai advises him to fire all his staff and Kyo, but he refuses. Later, Kyo meets her best friend who advises her that she should leave Gu before it's too late. Bai also meets her agent and complains about her worries, so her agent promises to tell Mrs. Gu. She tells Mrs. Gu, who calls Kyo. During the meeting with Kyo, Mrs. Gu asks her to leave Gu and even promises to give her any amount she names in return and also fulfill her wish. Kyo insists that both she and Gu are adults, and if Gu wants to break up with her, he should tell her, so she can't accept what Mrs. Gu is saying. That day, Gu also meets with Chu, who asks him to make a decision, but he insists he doesn't want to leave Kyo yet. When Kyo leaves Mrs. Gu, she drives away and suddenly gets dizzy. She tries to call Gu, but he doesn't pick up her call, so she parks by the roadside and rests. Suddenly, a guardian angel appears to her. The guardian angel is no one else but Yan. He sees her car by the roadside and comes down to help her. When he sees how weak she is, he asks her if they should go to an hospital, but she tells him it is her period pain, so he immediately decides to take her to safety by taking her to a hotel. He lays her quietly on the bed and sleeps on the couch. When she wakes up the following day, she feels way better and she appreciates him for helping her. He repeats that it was pleasure, but she appreciates him better because if he wasn't there, she would have been stranded. Just in case she gets stranded again, he gives her his phone number and she goes to work. To her shock, he sees the CCTV in front of her company showing pictures of her and Yan entering into the hotel. She feels so embarrassed that someone could circulate such embarrassing pictures of her, and when Gu comes in with Bai, Bai blows it out of proportion. Angrily, Gu drags Kyo into the room and accuses her of cheating. She reminds him she called him a lot when she needed help and swears to him that he isn't cheating, so he leaves. He commands his staff to erase every trace of the pictures online, and he also finds out it was Bai's agent that had stalked Kyo when she left Mrs. Gu's house and took the picture. He apologizes to Kyo that night and promises he will get Bai to apologize to her too. Also tells her he has erased the pictures and no one could mock her. He reminds her the next day is her birthday and promises to spend the day with her. The following day, Kyo starts the celebration and waits for Gu. Unfortunately, his mother calls him so he can meet Bai's family, and he didn't come for the birthday. Disappointed, Kyo lights her candles and ends her day. The following day, she submits a resignation letter. Gu refuses to accept the letter, claiming she was overreacting because of just a day. He asks her to take a break, but she refuses. She relocates to her friend's house, but when he gets home and can't find her dresses, he gets irrational. He finds her at her friend's house and calls her to come out. She meets him and reinstates that she is no longer interested. She tells him his mother called her and reminds him of his upcoming engagement, but he tries to kiss her, so she slaps him and leaves. The next day, she leaves her friend's house and lodges in a hotel, but the receptionist comes to tell her her room has been previously booked online and they have the presidential suite for her. When she gets to the suite, Gu appears to her. She tries to escape but fails. Again, he tries to get her to understand that he still wants her. He tells her what is between him and Bai is just a business proposal and she is the one he really wants, but she calls him a fool and refuses to be with him. She slaps him again, kicks him, and runs away. She calls Yan to pick her up and he takes her to a secured location. In an understanding manner, he tells her he knows what she is going through, but Gu will be engaged to Bai by the end of the month, and by then, he should leave her alone, so she should stay in that house. She insists on paying him rent and they fix the rent price. On the other hand, Gu keeps looking for her and he asks Zhu to help him. Zhu gets tired and reminds him that he can't take the two girls and one has to go, but he refuses to accept. Eventually, Zhu finds the CCTV picture of Yan taking Kyo and sends it to Gu. Gu confronts Yan, but Yan insists he won't tell him where Kyo is and he should leave Kyo alone because he doesn't deserve the girl. Gu gets angry and tries to hit Yan, but Yan dodges the attack and hits him. It turns into a fight, but Zhu comes into their rescue and drags Gu away so Yan can drive off. Yan returns home and Kyo sees the scars on his face. He tells her what had happened and she wonders why he is fighting on her behalf. He claims all he regrets is not hitting Gu more because he deserves all of that. He tells her that growing up, all he had wanted is a normal family and a perfect wife, and he thinks he has gotten his taste. She insists that the only reason he thinks that much of that is because he barely knows her and doesn't know her attitude. Otherwise, she is the opposite of what he wants. Before they continue the conversation, he receives an emergency call from work and leaves. It turns out Gu has intentionally bid for one of the project he wants. Zhu does as Gu has wanted, but wonders if the Bai family won't get pissed at Gu for that since Yan is Bai's cousin. But Zhu doesn't care about that. He claims he is doing is because he wants Kyo to notice it too. That day, Kyo's friend tells her about a company that is going down, Bamboo Forest Shoe, and Kyo immediately recognizes it as Yan's company. She doesn't think far before she knows it is Gu's handiwork, so she goes to his house to confront him. She reminds him he is getting married and asks him what he wants. He tells her he wants her to return back to him. She reminds him that Yan didn't do anything to deserve what he is getting, but he insists that Yan took his woman. She asks him if he will leave Yan if she returns, and when he says yes, he tells him she will return. He gets so jealous that she is returning because of Yan and can't come back when he was begging, but she walks away. Yan gets a call that Gu is pulled out of the deal and he suspects a foul play. He goes to the apartment and meets Kaio packing. He asks her why she was entering her trauma again, but she promises him that she didn't settle it well the other time and she will deal with it once and for all. She returns to Gu, who is excited, and he takes her for a movie night at home. He tells her he will hire a maid to take care of her, but she knows it is only to stalk her and her movement. She tries to talk away, but he drags her closer and tries to kiss her. She bites his mouth, walks away, telling him she only agreed to come back and not to have anything with him. The following day, Gu tells one of his staff, Cease, to get a necklace for him. At home, Kaio also finds out a maid is there. When Cease gets to the store, she coincidentally finds Bai and Zhu as they are shopping for Bai's engagement. When Cease tells them it was Gu that sent her, she assumes the piece was for her and picks a fine one for Cease. That night, Gu gives the necklace to Kaio. The following day, Gu expects Kaio to bring his lunch but is shocked to see Bai there with his lunch. He tries to send her away early, but Kaio meets her there. Bai is disappointed to see the necklace on Kaio, but Kaio barely cares about her and just drops the food. Gu tells Bai that the necklace was originally for Kaio and also reminds her that the engagement is their parents' plan, not his one. So Bai leaves angrily and complains to her agent, who advises her not to marry someone that has another woman in his heart, but she insists. On the engagement day, after Gu leaves home, Kaio abandons him too. In the car with his mother, Gu tries to call Kaio, but his mother reveals she was the one who planned the escape with Kaio, as she met Kaio some days ago. Upon arriving at the engagement hall, Gu runs into the car and tells his mother he doesn't want to get engaged. On the other hand, Kaio travels to her parents' home and they welcome her. The following day, Yan visits her because he had gotten her information in the lease she signed from him. She spends time with him, and as she is about to see him off, Gu arrives and meets them on the way. He tells her he has broken the engagement and he knows she is in love with him, so she should leave Yan. Yan refuses to let go, so he drags her, but Gu drags her in return. Her mother, Mrs. Kaio, walks by at about the same time, and since she has seen Yan at home, she assumes Gu was trying to molest her daughter, so she pushes him away and drags Kayan and Yan back into their restaurant. Upon returning to the restaurant, Yan offers to help them in the kitchen chores like cutting of the vegetables and other things, and this makes Mrs. Kaio much more interested in Yan because he feels like he will be a good husband to her daughter. Kaio's younger brother, Jai, is a well-known helper in the city. He doesn't like to see people stranded and always wants to help. On his way home, he sees the guards Mrs. Gu has sent to bring Gu back, and the guards are harassing him. The little boy decides to help and helps Gu escape from the guards. Gu looks at the apron on his body and confirms he is from the same restaurant, so he asks Jai to be his friend, and Jai invites him to the restaurant. When Mrs. Kaio sees Gu, she wants to chase him back right away, but Jai insists they are friends, so he should sit. Gu also claims he is hungry. Kaio prepares his food and serves him while he eats with Jai, and they talk. Meanwhile at home, Mrs. Gu tries to apologize to Mrs. Bai, who insists the engagement should be cancelled. Bai also claims she is sure Gu likes her, so she wants them to reschedule the engagement, which her mother eventually agrees to. As the day ends, Mrs. Kaio asks Yan to sleep, and as a result, Gu also asks to sleep and Jai insists he will sleep. Gu drags him away and tells him to leave, but he insists he will stay. He tells her he wants to marry her, but not immediately, but she reminds him he has no interest in her and all that is in his mind is business. Marriage isn't something people need to think much about before doing, and he is only hesitating because he thinks about his company more than the love he has for her. Regardless, he insists on staying, so he goes to their house and spends the night on the same bed with Yan. They argue throughout the night that he leaves for Kaio's room. In her room, he sees the picture of a guy and starts questioning her as to who he is, so she sends him away. The following day, she goes jogging with Yan, who tells her he knows she has Gu's interest in mind because he saw her light coil for Gu while sleeping. As they jog, Gu drives there and asks that Yan leaves for town. After several arguments between them, Yan follows him and they go to town, but he turns back immediately and returns to Kaio's home. In front of the house, he sees Jai with a cake, and Jai claims it's Kaio's birthday, which shocks him as he assumes he had earlier missed her birthday. Regardless, when he enters, she is shocked to see him. After the party, they drink together and she asks him if he is sure the persistence and the way he loves her isn't because of his bipolar. He insists he really likes her. She gets drunk and he takes her to her room. The following day, she finds him with the picture in her room and he asks who the man is. She explains that he is her high school senior who she saved from bullying and he became her tutor. His name is Su-Juan. When he was leaving high school, he promised to wait for her at the university. She wanted him so much and she wanted him to stop seeing her as a sister, so she planned several dates for him, but he didn't come. Gu comments that she was just a backup for Su-Juan, but she reveals that Su-Juan died 4 years ago. The accident Gu had, which made him lose a part of his memory and also get his heart changed, was with Su-Juan, and the heart that he has at the moment belongs to Su-Juan. She also reveals that the birthday she insists he celebrates with her every year is Su-Juan's birthday. Gu wonders if it was all a coincidence, but she tells him that what he calls a coincidence were well planned by someone. He assumes she had intentionally approached him 3 years ago because of the heart. At that moment, his heart starts pounding minute by minute and he can't breathe. He gets disappointed and he walks away from her. Upon returning home, Kaio receives a call from the person investigating Su-Juan's death, and they tell her that they haven't been able to gather any clue from their side regarding the issue, and it will be best if she helps them in gathering more clues. Meanwhile, Mrs. Gu receives a call from her husband, who is angry with her for the way Gu had behaved at his engagement and how he had embarrassed the family. She insists that if he thinks he can do better than her, then he should come home too. Gu coincidentally enters and his mother tries to scold him for all he has done, but he tells her he will sort all the issue out. She asks him why he is disgracing himself because of Kaio, and hearing her name triggers him, and he screams that his mum should not mention her name again. That is the first time he is shouting at his mum, and she is more than shocked. He figures his mistake and turns to apologize, then enters his room. That evening, he goes to the club and Ju tries to convince him to forget Kaio. He asks him what he has gotten from running away from his engagement, and despite all he has done to get her, she doesn't want him. He also claims that Kaio is just unnecessarily proud, and he believes he will do all in his power to forget her, even though it is mostly impossible. He calls girls that evening, but he keeps seeing them as if they are Kaio. He returns home drunk and gets a knock. He assumes it is Kaio, but it turns out to be Bai. She begs him and asks him what he has done that he hates her that much. He tells her she hasn't done anything and he will do anything to make it up to her. She insists all she wants is that he marries her, but he refuses to do that for her, so she slaps him and walks inside. Kaio also remains depressed. Her friend visits her and asks her if she is going to return to the city. She even offers her a job as her assistant, claiming she is too busy, but Kaio claims she still wants to remain off work for a short while. That evening, Gu walks around the house with his heart pounding. He enters into the pool and buries himself there. Ju suddenly calls Kaio that an emergency has happened to Gu and she should come. She tries to know what had happened, but Ju refuses to talk, so she runs there. She finds Gu in the pool and pulls him out, begging him not to die. He wonders if she is concerned about him as a person or about the heart inside of him. He tries to hug him, but she tells him she has realized that him and Su-Juan aren't the same, and although it took her a long time to realize, it is just the best time. She leaves him and walks away. For several days, Gu becomes a shadow of himself. He calls her severally, but her number isn't available. His mother gets tired, so she decides to help him forget her. She locks him into the room without a phone for days, and within those days, he refuses to eat. On the other hand, Bai returns to her piano. She tells her agent that she is tired of being embarrassed because of Gu and she will be giving up on him. Kaio also meets with her friend and she explains that she has told Gu the truth. She also appreciates that Gu didn't attend Su-Juan's last birthday, as it made it easy for her to realize that the man she had been holding on to and hugging isn't the man she really wished it was, and it was just Gu. Upon returning home that night, Yan visits and tells Kaio that he wants to open a branch in France and he wishes she should follow him, but she refuses. Gu also escapes from the locked room that night. His heart starts beating fast and he collapses and wakes up in the hospital. Upon waking up, he receives a call from Ju regarding Kaio's location and he runs there injured. He hugs her and begs her to give him a year, and in return, he will help her find out the truth about Su-Juan. He collapses again and she takes him back to the hospital. At the hospital, she considers the fact that she needs more information about Su-Juan's death and also Gu's offer. The following day, she makes her decision. She visits Gu with a file of all the clues she has found about the accident, and he collects it happily because he knows she is back with him for a year. He returns home and he gives Ju the file. Ju is glad that Kaio still has his interest in mind, but he claims it is only to find Su-Juan's killer. He shows him the pictures that shows that Su-Juan's car had been tampered with before the accident and tells him that Kaio suspects a man named Lai Changlin for the incident. Ju promises to do his best to find the truth and he leaves. Mrs. Gu arrives and tells Gu that they have to visit Bai's house. Although Gu accepts to visit, he claims he has to end the engagement and his mother gets pissed and sends him out of the house. He goes to Kaio's house and she doesn't want to accept him. She describes the way to a hotel for him, but he reminds her that his card has been seized. She offers to pay, but he refuses, so she takes him to one of the rooms. She tells him she has served him for 3 years and she doesn't want to serve him again, so he claims he will serve her this time. The following morning, Kaio leaves home early and he washes her clothes badly and even makes horrible food for her. Kaio meets Yan for the last time before he travels, as he is going the following day. When she gets back home, she sees her neat clothes have been washed in a stupid way and also sees the bad food. She tells Gu to stop stressing her, but when he notices Yan's suit on her, he gets jealous and tries to touch her. She slaps him, kicks him, and ties his hand with her belt, then locks him outside. As a result, he sleeps outside. She leaves the door open when she is going out the next day, and Ju also visits and sees Gu outside. He takes his picture and laughs at him, the downfall of a great boss. Kaio meets with her friend, Zhang Ling, while Gu tries to organize a lovely dinner for her. She receives a call from her former colleagues that they will be visiting, and she quickly sends a message to Gu. When they enter, they see all the flowers and candles, and she lies that it was from a hangout she had the night before and she forgot to clean up. Gu, dressed in rabbit ears, tries to hide from his staff, but sees his wristwatch in the house. Kaio denies that it is his wristwatch and they accept. When they are about to leave, they see Gu with the rabbit head and they laugh. After they leave, Kyo begs him to stop helping her with anything as it makes things worse for her. Regardless, he goes out the next day and finds a dating app for people in long-distance relationships. He returns and insists Kyo downloads it because she is always away from home and they are going distance in a way too, and she reluctantly does so. He wakes up the next morning and sees her preparing a meal. It's been a while since she had prepared breakfast for him, so he assumes it is his meal, but she says no. She packs the meals and leaves the house, so he stalks her and sees her drop something at a library. He wonders if she has a date there, but when he opens the door, he realizes it is the date she had planned with Su-Juan before he died, and he feels so emotional. She goes to have the lunch alone and Gu watches her. When he goes to play on the swing, he wears a Teddy outfit and plays with her. They spend the night together playing, and as she is about to leave, he removes his outfit and reveals himself. She asks him why he is stalking her, and he tells her he found out when he checked Su-Juan photo gallery that she intended to propose to Su-Juan on that day 4 years ago. She admits and reminds him that Su-Juan can't come again. He tells her Su-Juan is there. He takes her hands and puts it on his chest so she can see how it is beating. He tells her he has Su-Juan's heart and he wants her to know he still has her in mind. Kyo refuses, reminding him that he is nothing like Su-Juan. He admits and says he wants to make Kyo see him as a person. He wants her to forget the person she was in the past and live life anew. She gets emotional and hugs him. The following morning, he wakes to prepare breakfast for her. As they eat, Zhongling visits and complains that she has some flowers she needs to sell. Kyo claims she can't sell it, but Gu reminds her they sell houses, so why not sell flowers? He promises to help Kyo sell it if she will give him something in return, but he doesn't ask what he wants immediately. They proceed to sell, but they get no buyer. As they advertise, they see their staff at work and the staff were convinced to join too. They still can't sell despite their advertisement. As night falls, Gu pulls a trick where he tells everyone that Kyo promised to marry him if he sells the flowers. They get buyers, and to make the make-believe real, he promises to Kyo with flowers. They drive home and she appreciates him. He reminds her he only did it because he will get something in return. They plan a dinner for the next day, but after baking the cake, he finds out his father is around. He goes to meet Mr. Gu, who tells him the same thing his mother has been telling him and how he should leave Kyo. He refuses to leave her and walks away. Kyo waits in front of the house on her bike and drives him to their date. They share their cake, confess their love to each other and how they want to grow together. They share a passionate kiss and end the night. As they wake the next day, Gu prepares for work. Kyo also receives a call from the staff that an investor is waiting for Gu at work. After she sees him off, she goes to prepare lunch for him but finds out that Mr. Gu is seeking for her. She leaves to see Mr. Gu and he tries to tell her that their family don't love and Gu would eventually leave her. He claims he also fell in love with someone but had to leave, but she tells him Gu isn't like him and she isn't leaving him. Before they finish their discussion, Gu gets home and can't find Kyo. He assumes it's his father, and inside the rain, he rushes to confront his father. Mr. Gu comes out and asks him why he is messing himself up because of a girl. He asks if his father has been in love before, but his father said love doesn't matter and life will surely go on. This gets him disturbed that he falls on his knees in the rain while his father walks away. Kyo brings an umbrella and she takes him to the car. His father watches them and declares that he is no longer the sharp knife he knew before, and as a result, he doesn't deserve to inherit the company. She takes him home, takes care of him, and he asks her what his father has said. She tells him, and he also apologizes for what he had made her go through. They promise each other that no matter how much people try to separate them, they will be together forever. The following day, they receive a visit from Zhu, who reveals he has found out a key about Su-Juan's death. He confirms that the suspect's name is really Yao Shund. However, he has only confirmed the name and has no other information. After he says it, Gu gets a rush of the memories he has forgotten, and he asks Zhu to drive him home because he thinks he knows Yao Shund. He checks his photo gallery and shows them that Yao Shund was his father's former personal assistant. He barely goes out, but he died a month ago. His house is still intact, so they go to check. While checking the shelf, he sees a hidden phone and sees conversation between Yao Shund and his mother. Fearing that it will implicate his mother, he doesn't tell Kyo about it. He returns home and he reads all the conversation. He asks Kyo what she will do if she finds out the death of Su-Juan is related to his family. She reassures him that they have decided to start anew, and as long as she doesn't find out he is hiding anything from her, she won't take out her anger against his parents over him and they will remain together. At night, she checks the document Zhu gave them and traces the transaction on it. She finds out Mrs. Gu sent some money to Yao Shund. Concerned, after Gu leaves for work, she meets Zhongling and tells her. Zhongling asks her what she will do if she finds out Gu may be hurt by her discovery and if she wants to stop investigating. She tells her that she intends nothing will separate her and Gu, and she will ensure she tells Gu what she has found out so they can find a solution to it. Upon reaching this decision, she goes to his office. On the other hand, Mrs. Gu visits Gu and Gu asks her what she has done and if she killed Su-Juan. She insists she didn't order that Su-Juan should be killed, but when she found out he was also Mr. Gu's son, she didn't want him to come and take the property, so she asked Yao Shun to stop Su-Juan from meeting Gu. She asks if her son wants to reveal this secret, but he tells her he doesn't care and gives her the phone that contains the conversation between her and Yao Shun. unknown to him that Kaio is by the door. She opens the door and gets so disappointed. He follows her and tries to apologize to her, but she insists she can't be with a liar. When she opens the elevator door, she is shocked to see Su-Juan in front of her. After the initial confusion, she goes to sit and he explains what had happened. 4 years ago, his mother was sick. He found his father's picture and showed her on her sick bed. His mother revealed they were lovers until his family insisted he marries Mrs. Gu. It was after the breakup that she found out she was pregnant and she couldn't tell him. At that point, Su-Juan needed money for his mother's sickness, so he decided to meet Mr. Gu. It was on his way that he collided against Gu. When he woke, he was told about his mother's death, and he also met Mr. Gu, who was so open to him. To protect himself from Mrs. Gu, he decided to stay hidden. Kaio asks him whose heart was in Gu since he is alive, and he says he doesn't know. That night, Gu also asks his mother whose heart was in him. She tells him that he has had heart disease since teenage and she had kept him on the waiting list. After the accident, he really needed a heart and the hospital provided one for him, so she doesn't even know who the donor is. He returns home that evening and calls Kaio since she isn't home. She tells him that they have nothing together again and he should pack his load and leave before she arrives. She receives the call while with Su-Juan and tells him that he doesn't have to worry about Gu, although Su-Juan claims he will make Gu suffer for what he has done to her for the past 3 years. The following day, Gu's family have a meal together where Mr. Gu introduces Su-Juan and asks them to accept him. Gu claims he doesn't know of any brother and he isn't interested in the meal. He walks away and Mr. Gu also announces that Su-Juan will be joining the company, which angers Mrs. Gu that she walks away too. Gu visits Kaio and sees her packing his loads to send him away. He begs her to remain with him, but she refuses. She tries to take his mug and put it in his box, but he struggles with her and the mug falls and breaks. He takes his box and leaves the house. At home, his mother tries to talk with him about the issues, but he asks to be left alone. The following day, his aunt announces to his staff about Su-Juan's inauguration and insists they must all be in attendance, but they insist they aren't going to come because they think he doesn't deserve it. When Su-Juan arrives, the staff are at a meeting. Gu's aunt disturbs the meeting, wondering why they didn't come, but Gu asks one of the staff to send them away. The meeting is about a very disturbing deal with the need a great idea to sort out. Su-Juan offers them his suggestion and they all admit that it is smart. As a result, Gu tells him to lead the deal and give him feedback in 3 days while he goes to hand out with Ju. He admits that business-wise, Su-Juan will be a good pick, but personally, Su-Juan disturbs him a lot. After drinking, he visits Kaio but meets Su-Juan by the door. Su-Juan tells him that he was only a replacement and since the real owner is back, he isn't needed. He also says he will punish him for how he and his mother had destroyed his family. He goes nearer to Gu and holds his clothes. This angers Gu, so he hits him. It is at this point that Kaio comes out and she goes to meet Su-Juan. Gu gets jealous and asks why she is protective of him, but she reminds him that he was the one who destroyed what they shared, so he doesn't have a mouth to talk. The next day, Gu is disturbed about Kaio that he mistakenly signs her name on his document instead of his name. After work, Su-Juan's staff invites him to Su-Juan's welcome party and he refuses at first but eventually accepts to go. During the party, the attendant tells them about a pepper competition and Su-Juan refuses to participate because he doesn't have the stomach for pepper. Trying to be the best, Gu claims he will participate. As a result, Su-Juan joins too. After the competition, Gu gets tired and bends outside. He sees Kaio coming and tries to reach out to her, but she goes to help Su-Juan instead. As she walks by, he complains about his stomach too, but she tells him to call the hospital and leave her alone. Trying to recover old times, Su-Juan takes Kaio to their old area where he shows her the first wish he hung on the tree, that she will get admission into the university. She also shows him all the ones she hung for him when he was at the university, that he will come back safely. He reminds her that she had something to tell him before he disappeared and claims he had been thinking about it a lot. He asks her if she wants to say it now, but she hesitates. She tells him that when he was away, she felt she won't recover, but she eventually realizes that change are needed in life. He drags her closer, reminding her of a phrase from a book they read together, that although several things in life may be uncertain, if they are certain of some things, it is enough. He claims he is back and they can have a future. After leaving there, he visits Mr. Gu and gives him his drug, then visits his uncle, Jiang. Uncle Jiang advises him that although they have Mr. Gu's love at the moment, he won't always be there for them and they need to get other people. He can't be like Gu because Gu has his mother's help. He advises him not to forget his purpose and tells him that he can't keep hanging on to Kaio. He tells him about Bai and how it will be good for him to use the opportunity of Gu's disappointment to get closer to Bai and secure the relationship between the two families. On the other hand, Kaio meets her friend, Jiang Ling, concerned. Jiang Ling wonders why she is still concerned when her childhood lover is back and claims she will pick Su-Juan if she is the one. That evening, Gu visits Kaio again and tries to apologize to her, but she refuses to hear him out. She closes the door against him but cries loudly because she misses him. Trying to execute the plan that Uncle Jiang had given him, Su-Juan strategically meets Bai by hitting her on the way and helps her to treat her legs. He also carries her into the bus, and that night, he visits her at home with meals. She loves the kind gestures as he listens to her play and gets drunk with her. That night, Kaio misses Gu so much that she opens their dating app. The following day, Bai wakes in bed with Su-Juan, but she begs him to keep that in secret, although she knows they didn't do anything. He introduces herself to her as Edel, a Upon leaving Bai, Su-Juan goes to meet Kaio and invites her to an auction that evening. Mrs. Gu also insists Gu follows her to the same auction. When Mrs. Gu sees Mrs. Bai, she takes Gu to her and even offers to buy one of the auction necklace for Bai. Mrs. Bai refuses, claiming her family is also rich, but Bai wants a gift from Gu, so she accepts. As they talk, Su-Juan arrives and Mrs. Bai recognizes him. When Bai finds out she has been played, she calls him to the restroom and tells him she knows their family is filled with pretenders, but she doesn't care, so he should leave her out of all of that and shouldn't do as if he knows her. During the auction, Gu and Su-Juan compete in buying the necklace, but Gu eventually wins the bid. After winning, Kaio excuses herself from the gathering and claims she needs air. For the first time, Gu didn't follow her, and that makes Bai feel much better. After the auction, Gu goes to give the certificate of auction of the necklace to Bai, while she is glad he got it for her. She wonders why he wants to pretend to be nice to her suddenly, and if it is because he knows Su-Juan is coming for his position in the family and he wants to seal his position by getting her help. He reminds her he doesn't receive help from ladies and he is very sorry for what he had done to her, and he doesn't hate her, but he sees her as a sister. She angrily asks him if he needs more siblings because he had just gotten an emergency brother and now he wants a sister. She walks away. On the other hand, Su-Juan goes to meet Kaio where she is drinking. Before he gets to speak to her, Mr. Gu calls him to introduce him to some of his investors. As they talk, he sees Bai walk away. He goes to meet her and overhears as she listens to some girls gossiping about her. He covers her ears from such gossip and take her away. The girls call her a pest for hanging on to Gu despite how he treats her, and she tells Su-Juan that they are barely at fault. Su-Juan tells her she will get a good man for herself, but she tells him she only wants Gu, which makes him discouraged that he will never get her to be his own. Kaio gets drunk and a random man comes to hold her. Gu comes to her rescue and drives her home. He also does a hangover drink for her, and while he makes the drink, she comes to hug him from behind. He puts her to bed and leaves. When she wakes up, she calls Su-Juan to know if he was the one that helped her. He says no. She goes to the parlor and she feels nauseated. She goes to the hospital for a pregnancy test and she confirms that she is pregnant. She meets Zhongling to think of what to do. She admits that it isn't a good time for her to get pregnant, but she also doesn't want to remove the child, so she is faced with two issues. She goes to the hospital for consultation and Gu stalks her and finds out about her pregnancy, so he decides to propose. He draws the kind of ring he wants so they can make it for him. That evening, while Kaio browses about her symptoms, Su-Juan comes in and sees it but hides this. That night, he meets Uncle Zhang, who tells him that it was a bad idea for him to bring Kaio to an auction that he knew Gu will be at too. He reveals to Uncle Zhang that Bai is obsessed with Gu and won't give him an opportunity, but he will ensure that she doesn't get Gu and destroy all her hopes. The following day, Bai gets the necklace that Gu had bought for her and she wears it to see Su-Juan proudly. As they talk, he asks her to stop trying to get Gu because it is too late and reveals to her that Kaio is pregnant for Gu. She gets so angry that she goes to the restroom and throws the necklace off. She returns and drinks to stupor. She promises that she will do whatever she can to stop Kaio from marrying Gu, but Su-Juan tells her she don't need to stress it because Mrs. Gu won't accept Kaio, but what she won't reject is a Gu's grandson. She cries as she asks him what she should do and if she should just wait and watch until the love of her life leaves. On the other hand, Gu gets the modeled necklace and he smiles at it as he prepares for his proposal. What will be the end of this love story? Will the lovers reunite?